From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here.
Live views from the Orion spacecraft as it looks back on Earth following completion of the translunar injection burn.
Houston is go for TLI.
Integrity copies, and your Integrity crew is go for TLI. With this burn to the moon, we do not leave Earth, we choose it.
It was just absolutely spectacular. Something that has meant so much.
Last week, something happened we haven't felt in a while. Not just a mission, not just a milestone, but joy. Moon joy. 4 astronauts riding a column of fire away from the Earth, looping around the far side of the moon, and then seeing something no human being had ever seen with their own eyes. And then turning back and coming home safely.
Something that has meant so much to so many cultures, scientifically, spiritually, culturally, for so long, seeing it in a different way, and just pairing that with how much we miss and love our families and knowing that they're looking up and seeing the same moon, it's a pretty amazing feeling.
Because for all the precision, the math, the engineering, one of the other things that spaceflight does is change how we see this place. How small the Earth is, how fragile, and how rare it is to leave it. So today, we're starting there. Not with hardware, not with the risk, but with that feeling of going away and coming home. From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here, a show about the people making and breaking our digital world. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. And today, the story of what helped make that moon joy possible. Because Artemis II didn't happen in a vacuum. It was built in part on a mission that happened a couple of years ago, involving a scrappy lunar lander that nearly didn't make it at all.
Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beam.
Stay with us. For a moment last week, in the middle of everything else going on, people stopped and looked up to follow the progress of a spacecraft as it slipped past the moon and disappeared behind it. Artemis II. 4 astronauts who not only went deeper into space than any human before them, but got the world to hold its collective breath until splashdown. Moments like that don't really begin there. They're just the part we get to see. What helped make Artemis II possible happened earlier, an unmanned mission 2 years ago, one that came a lot closer to not making it at all.
Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go IM-1 and the Odysseus lunar lander.
Tim Crane helped lead that flight, and for him, it wasn't just a job. It was a childhood dream, 5 decades in the making. If you grew up in the 1970s like Tim Crane did, you couldn't ignore space. It was everywhere, on TV, in classrooms, and in the grainy glow of the evening news, with astronauts landing on the moon.
Now, 2.5 minutes before the launch of Apollo 13, test conductor told the astronauts, "Good luck, head for the hills."
Apollo 17 is finally on its way to the moon,
and the Voyager missions, hurtling towards Jupiter and Saturn, and then sending back those first spectacular pictures.
Voyager spacecraft to extend man's senses farther into the solar system than ever before.
Tim's fascination with all this crystallized one night when his dad took him on a little field trip.
My dad had an office at the end of the runway in Barksdale Air Force Base in Bossier City, Louisiana. And we saw the space shuttle come in and land on its carrier, and it flew right over our heads. And it was like an electric shock ran through my body. And I knew that I was going to work, I was probably 10 years old. I was going to work either on planes or spacecraft or starships or warp drives or something. That was what I was going to do.
That electric shock never went away. He went to school, became an engineer, and eventually co-founded Intuitive Machines, a private space company. He's also the chief technology officer there. And in 2019, Tim and his team won a NASA contract to make a lunar lander that would take the United States back to the moon. They named the spaceship Odysseus, though by the end, the team just called him Odie. So are you the one who called Odie a scrappy little dude, or was that someone else?
I can't say for sure. We early on kind of said, this spacecraft's a fighter. And then that kind of morphed into, as the hours got longer and the sleep got shorter, a scrappy little dude.
Odie was given an ambitious assignment: lay the groundwork for a future in which astronauts don't just visit the moon, but actually live there. It would become a kind of cosmic rest stop for humanity on the way to deeper places, maybe even Mars. But to make that possible, Odie had to go somewhere no spacecraft had successfully landed before: the moon's South Pole. Now, this isn't the postcard moon.
Here, men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon. We came in peace with all mankind.
The terrain there is serrated and shadow-soaked. Sunlight skims the surface at odd angles, which confuses navigation systems. Communications there blink in and out, like a bad cell signal at the edge of the universe. But it's also where the moon's ice hides, ancient deposits tucked into craters that sunlight never touches.
They call it a cold trap. That basically that water freezes and drops to the surface of that crater, not escaping to space. And that over time, over millions and millions of years, that has now filled these permanently shadowed regions with water of some sort.
For human space exploration, that would be huge. Because if we ever hope to build an outpost on the moon, a real one, a sustainable one, we'll need water.
But we don't know what form that water is in. So is it a slush mixed in with the regolith? Is it different layers, kind of like sedimentary layers as different impacts have happened over time? Is it an ice sheet, within a meter or two of the surface? We don't know.
And that's where Odie comes in.
Going to the South Pole and doing direct measurements of what that water is like is really important. And one of the things I really like about space exploration is every time we go someplace new in the universe, we see the same elements that we're used to on the periodic table doing different things.
If usable ice is there, astronauts could melt it into water, split it into oxygen, even turn it into rocket fuel to push further out into the solar system. So a lot was riding on this. If Odie could stick this South Pole landing, it could effectively redraw the map for where humans go next. Tim and his team spent years coaxing Odie to life, soldering hardware, running simulations, rewriting software. And in the end, what they built looked a little like a British phone booth, or for the Doctor Who faithful, a TARDIS on 6 legs.
And that's your spaceship?
It's called the TARDIS, Time and Relative Dimension in Space.
And after all that prep and all that testing, in February 2024, Tim sat at the control center in Texas, crossed his fingers, and waited.
Our control center is round. It looks a lot more like maybe like a submarine command center, right? With a table in the middle. We're all facing outwards at our screens. There is a big screen on one wall that we can look at for kind of a situational awareness.
And then the countdown began.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go IM-1 and the Odysseus lunar lander.
You kind of watch it counting down and you go, this is really going to happen. We're about to be on our way to the moon.
Odie rode a SpaceX Falcon 9 out of the Earth's atmosphere, a tiny phone booth-sized passenger on a tower of fire. In orbit, it separated, a bright dot sliding toward the moon.
Those beautiful pictures then of Odie separating and coasting off from the Falcon 9 upper stage. What a sight. And that just, it's indelibly marked in my memory forever.
And what's the feeling that you have? Is it love? What is it?
It's hard to describe. Like, even right now, I want to jump up and pump my fist in the air and just go, yeah. It brings a tingle.
It was everything that kid on the roof imagined. Odie approached the moon just as they'd programmed it to do. Everything was on track. And then, just hours before Odie was set to land and make history, Tim's partner rushed into the control room.
Hey, Tim, the laser altimeters aren't going to fire. And the blood just drained from my face.
It felt like an echo of that other moon mission, Apollo 13.
Houston, we have a problem.
When Apollo 13's oxygen tank exploded, NASA's moonshot suddenly became a rescue. Engineers had to invent their way out of a disaster in real time, with duct tape, slide rules, and pure nerve. And now, more than 50 years later, another team was staring down its own moment of truth, as Odie and its lunar dreams hurtled toward the moon with a broken laser altimeter. Without the altimeter, they'd have no way to calculate Odie's altitude and speed, no way to know when to ease the thrusters that can help it land softly.
The altimeter is really important because if you're a little bit high, you're going to run out of fuel. If you're a little bit low, you could potentially smash into the moon and, then that's it.
You crash. Game over. So at its most basic level, the laser altimeter on Odie measured distance by shooting a laser beam at the surface of the moon. Then, based on the time it took to reflect back, it does a calculation that tells the team on Earth how far Odie is from the surface.
There's a clock that says, fire the laser now. The photons shoot out from it, they hit the moon, they come back, and they trigger a detector, and then it stops the clock like a stopwatch, and it goes, I got the return. And based on that time, it goes, well, I know the speed of light, so this is how far away the thing you're looking at, in this case, the surface of the moon is.
So there in the control room, Tim's mind was racing as his partner broke the news.
And, he asked me, what do you think the probability of landing safely is? I said, not much, because we really need to know how high we are to safely execute the landing sequence.
If the timing of the altimeter is off, even slightly, it would be like thinking you're 3 feet from the car next to you on the freeway, but you're only 3 inches. That won't end well. So the scientists in the control room jumped into action.
And everybody, pouring one more cup of coffee, scratching their chin, looking at whiteboards, scribbling on paper, just racking our brains for what we might do.
They started taking inventory, every sensor, every radio, every instrument Odie had on board, searching for any possible way to jerry-rig a new set of eyes for the spacecraft. During Apollo 13, engineers at Mission Control had to rummage through whatever the astronauts had on board, and then fix the problem physically. This time, there was no one inside the capsule. The crew was here, on Earth. So the repair had to happen digitally. Code instead of duct tape.
Is there something I could do with the radio signal? Could I modify what we're doing with the cameras?
Odie only had so much fuel, and they were burning through the clock. And then, at the height of the panic, Tim had an idea. When we come back, saving Odie. Stay with us.
It is called Internet.
I use the World Wide Web information superhighway.
Cybersecurity. Why do things go viral?
Click here.
Just before the break, Odie was circling the moon, looping around and around, buying time. Tim and the team were scrambling, trying to answer a basic question. How do you land a spacecraft without an altimeter? And then it hit him. Odie hadn't carried astronauts, but it did have experiments on board, 6 of them. And maybe, just maybe, one of them could do a second job. They started going down the list.
a landing sensor that NASA had been working on for some time, an in-space navigation sensor, a electron sheath experiment, and then we had a laser reflector array.
And buried in that inventory was something promising, a NASA device called a Doppler LiDAR.
It has 3 lasers on it that measure the Doppler shift in the lasers so that it can directly measure velocity with respect to the surface. So it's different from our optical system.
It wasn't built to measure altitude, but it was close enough to try. Maybe not perfect, but certainly better than nothing. So the team went to work, frantically trying to turn one of Odie's passengers into something that could actually help fly it. They figured out that they could hack the Doppler gear, not hack to break it, but to make it do something a little different than it was intended to do. The hack would essentially give Odie some new commands. It would tell it, hey, get your location reading from this LiDAR that happens to be on board instead of your regular altimeter.
Since we already had those Doppler measurements piped into our navigation system, we figured how we could rewrite the software to also take the range measurements in.
Engineers might normally spend weeks on this kind of coding project, but in this case, they only had a fraction of that time.
We had 2 orbits to go. Each orbit's about 2 hours. So we're about 4 hours from landing.
They were also about to lose contact with Odie as the lander inched toward the far side of the moon. One team scrambled to do the math, translating Doppler readings into altitude. Another rewrote navigation code so Odie could understand it.
Some trigonometry and the right-hand rule.
2 hours passed, the coders chugging coffee and Red Bull, typing like Odie's life depended on it because, in a way, it did. Finally, they finished their coding, the best they could do in the time that they had. And they weren't sure it would work. The only way to find out would be to power off Odie, reboot, and see if the new code had installed. Tim and the team looked at each other and began the shutdown.
We worked through the procedure to shut the navigation system off, to bring it back up and reboot it.
Just as they finished, Odie slipped behind the moon and the signal went dead.
That was surreal because there's nothing we could do. There was no more modifications to make. We can't talk to the vehicle anymore. It was kind of this really strange pressure relief, knowing that you just had to wait. And I was holding my breath, watching the screen as this all played out.
Silence. And then a blip, a heartbeat on the screen.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Odie was back, even better than before.
I got to tell you, the visual odometry performance that we were seeing on our consoles was better than we'd ever seen in testing. It was making measurements. It was updating the onboard state all by itself. It was just working perfectly.
The control room erupted. Cheers, fist bumps, disbelief. But the celebration didn't last long.
Altitude of 10 kilometers, downrange 1,100 kilometers.
Minus 5-minute deadpins.
Depause, terrain relative navigation measurements.
Because as the data poured in, something felt off. Odie was dropping quickly, too quickly.
We were coming in fast. We were probably a couple hundred meters lower than we anticipated.
Tim watched on the monitor as Odie was firing its engines to try to slow the descent. 100 meters to go, 80 meters, 70 meters, 50 meters.
30 meters over the landing site, and then we contacted the ground. We hit hard.
And then, after what felt like a really long time, the announcement came.
Houston, Odysseus has found his new home.
They'd done it, landed on the moon for the first time in 52 years. And as the dust settled, Odie got to work, switching on its instruments, probing the terrain, sending home information from the lunar South Pole, a place we've barely touched, the kind of data you need before you send people. So when Artemis II looped around the moon, it wasn't flying blind.
The Earth is almost in full eclipse. The moon is almost in full daylight. It is truly awe-inspiring up here.
It was following a path shaped in part by a small lander that went first. And for the team guiding Odie down, it was a reminder that the line between miracle and mistake in space is only a few keystrokes wide. This is Click Here. Here's what you need to know about the tech world this week. It's Tuesday, April 14th. While President Donald Trump called for a 2-week ceasefire in the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, officials say a different kind of conflict is already well underway. Not on a battlefield, but online.
This is what modern warfare has become. You shut off somebody's water or disrupt their electricity in some way.
That warning is coming as multiple federal agencies, including the FBI and the National Security Agency, say Iran-backed hackers are looking to target U.S. infrastructure and the industrial systems that keep them running. According to the new advisory, attackers are looking to exploit programmable logic controllers made by Rockwell Automation, equipment that helps automate everything from water treatment to manufacturing. The result? Disruptions and financial loss. Officials are urging companies that use these systems to take these vulnerable devices offline and contact Rockwell immediately. The advisory stops short of naming a specific group responsible. It just says Iranian-affiliated attacks are escalating. Since the war began, Iran has publicly claimed responsibility for 2 cyber attacks, one against a Michigan-based medical tech company, and another exposing emails belonging to FBI Director Kash Patel. U.S. officials are warning that may be just the beginning. Next, what happens when an AI system becomes so powerful it can't be released?
Anthropic has decided not to release its latest AI model called Claude Mythos to the full public.
Anthropic, maker of the AI assistant Claude, says it has built a new model that can find security flaws in software. A lot of them. Even 0 days that the companies who wrote the software haven't discovered yet. It is so good at finding vulnerabilities, the company said, that it has decided to just have a limited release to a small group of key companies, including Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Together, they're forming a coalition called Project Glasswing. The idea? To use the model defensively to find vulnerabilities before cybercriminals do. Anthropic says the system can carry out autonomous security research and has already flagged thousands of issues across major operating systems and browsers. For years, cybersecurity experts have warned about what advanced AI could mean for critical infrastructure. Anthropic says that moment may be here. Full disclosure, Anthropic is a financial supporter of this program through paid advertising. That support doesn't influence our editorial decisions. Next, a lawsuit raising new questions about what happens when care goes remote in the most critical moments.
A Connecticut family is suing after their 26-year-old son died in what the lawsuit describes as a, quote, fake ICU.
In August 2024, Connor Hilton was admitted to Bridgeport Hospital Milford campus with severe abdominal pain. He was diagnosed with pancreatitis and alcohol withdrawal. Doctors considered him high risk, so he was moved to the ICU. But according to a lawsuit filed by his family, there was no specialist physically at his bedside. Instead, his care was overseen through a tele-ICU system, a remote doctor appearing on a screen. Then, Hilton stopped breathing. The lawsuit alleges that when an on-site doctor was called to intubate him, the doctor didn't know where the ICU was, losing critical minutes asking for directions. Less than 2 hours later, a physician on a video screen pronounced Hilton dead. Yale New Haven Health, which is also named in the suit, says it's committed to patient safety, but declined to comment on the specifics of the case. And finally, is the mystery solved?
I guess we'll just start off with the yes or no question. Are you Satoshi Nakamoto?
A recent investigation by the New York Times identified British cryptographer Dr. Adam Back as the likely mystery man behind Bitcoin. In 1997, Adam Back founded something called Hashcash, a system that later became foundational to Bitcoin. Reporters analyzed early emails and cryptography forum posts, comparing writing style, punctuation, and even spelling. And they found striking similarities between Back and Nakamoto. More than that, years before Bitcoin launched, Back had already described many of its core ideas. Still, the evidence is circumstantial, and Back continues to deny that he indeed is Satoshi Nakamoto. For now, the identity behind Bitcoin remains unconfirmed, but perhaps a little less unknown. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Today's show was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gaida, Zach Hirsch, and Casey Georgie. It was edited by Karen Duffin and Sarah Quevedo, and fact-checked by Darren Ankrum. Original music is by Ben Livingston, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, our illustrator is Megan Goff, and our sound designers and engineers are Jake Cook and Jesse Neiswanger. I'm Dina Temple-Reston, and thanks for listening.